Okay, so those of you that are new to IXL and everybody that's joined us, welcome. I'm just going to go over some brief how-tos in IXL. I know that science and social studies and Spanish, all of you maybe here have not done IXL. It's pretty easy. So I'm logged in here as a new teacher. Okay, and you will have to create your own rosters. Now, the great thing about the rosters, though, is you are connected to your school. So if you have a roster list or somewhere online that you can pull it up, just put it next to this screen, and you should be able to start putting in the last name. So if I go in here and start writing, so here, Smith, I think I'm in as a Northview teacher. So I can just click on her and she's added already. Do not change the username or the password. These kids that are on here, they've already been using this, so do not change their username or password. They already know what their username and password is, what it is, so don't do that. But as soon as you start, if I start just even typing the last name, they will pop up. So just know that when you're creating your rosters, it's super easy. You can actually group them by class if you want to. You could, here you can put in like class, if I want to put in period 1, period 2, and so forth. So I can submit here, and then you can start doing that by class. Okay. So I think you need to do that before you start your rosters, but this is how you add kids. So very easy. All you have to do is start typing and then find your students, and then it will automatically add. I don't even have to click enter. Any questions on rostering? If you do, right here in the chat on the right-hand side, you can ask questions. There are others on here that can answer your questions as I go along, okay? So that is how you would create a roster. If I go into learning and say I go to science, especially science, you want to really, we've noticed that you want to look by topics, not necessarily grades. So especially for science teachers on here, you might want to look at topics, because we noticed as coaches, if when you go in here by grades, it has 6th grade, 7th grade, 8th grade. Say I go to 8th grade, some of these things may not line up with what you're doing, but you can always go in by topics. And this is way easier to look for certain standards. So say you're doing earth science or biology or physics, you can go in here and look at those specific skills. And then it breaks it down by grade level as well. But here it's a little bit easier to navigate. On the side, if you notice here, if you go by topics, it's all on the side as well. Again, here's like the view by, you can go by grades or topics, but we notice for science, it's a lot easier to go by topic. Okay, so say that I find, let me go by topics again. Say I'm in earth science and I'm in Sully's class and I want to, assign these. First, if you notice, if I just put my mouse over this or my little clicker over this, you get a preview here. So I didn't click on it or anything. So you can sort of give a little preview to yourself to see what's on there. If you want, you can click in here and then it will actually go to asking you questions. So you don't necessarily want to do that. You sort of just want to go over that. So again, I'm going to go by topics. Earth science. So when you click on it, it's not that great, because then it will actually take you to all of the questions and you have to answer them. So the best thing to do is, if you're just over it, It gives you a preview. You can even, while it's up, if you notice, I can just scroll over to the box. You got to be real careful. And then you can actually click on these little circles and it will go over what the skill preview is. Okay, so this is sort of like a shortcut, a preview for you to see what's in those skills. If you go to the stars, this is for anybody. If you go to the stars, here is where you can suggest skills. So if I want to suggest skills, so it will pop up on all of your students' lists. Okay, so if I go here, say I want them to identify rocks and minerals. I really like the skill preview, so I want to assign that now. So now I just go over the star. I'm not clicking anything yet, but if I want to assign it to all students, I can click this all students and it will go to them. If I just want to give it to period 1, I can click on the star and it will only give it to period 1. So for example, right here, all students. Now, another thing is, if you want to just give it to certain students, this is where the differentiation really comes in. If you know certain kids need certain skills more than others, this is how you can differentiate. I can click on all students, or you can click on by your class if you know your student, if you've already put it in by periods, you can click on that, or all students, and then all of my kids would come up here. If you notice, I only added 2 right now, or 3. If I wanted to give it to Amelia, all I would do is click on the star next to her, and this would assign to Amelia Smith only. So you can do it by all students, everyone that you have, by periods, if you set it up by periods, or by just certain students. Okay. Any questions so far? I'm going to jump in here and see. If any coach wants to jump on and start talking, go ahead so you can answer some of these questions as we go.
Hey, Nancy, do you mind going back to the first page where you set the roster up and maybe go through that a little bit slower with the classes and what that looks like? So essentially, if you set your class periods ahead of time, it's really easy to add students to each class period.
So let me clear the roster here.
Okay, so if you see on Nancy's screen where it says create classes and she clicks on that link, and then she'll name like period 1 and period 2, and then hit submit. And so then on her roster, when she starts typing in a student's name, you can see that that student is right now not assigned to a class. So Nancy, go ahead and select your student and then click on the drop down. Oh, go back to Amelia. Maybe we should have selected it first, sorry.
Okay.
Okay, well, select in the drop down what period first.
Oh, I see. Over
You
here.
see what I'm saying?
Yep. So here is where if you're adding classes, you can select who it goes to. Do this first, because as soon as you, so if you notice, if as soon as I click on Antonio, it will automatically, it just bumps him up. So you don't have to press enter or anything. So make sure if you're creating classes, you do this side first. Correct, Andrea?
Right.
Yeah.
Yep. And the nice part is when I was practicing was that I was able, it like defaults to the period of the student above it. So let's say I do all of period 1. It doesn't continue to default to period 1. I'm pretty sure it defaults then to period 2. Like, so I do all of period 1 and then I select period 2 for my first student in period 2, and it will start to default to period 2. So then I can, it defaults to the one above it. So I don't have to reselect the class period every time. So it should go pretty quickly.
Yep, it did. So if you notice, all of these are automatically in period 1. Now I want to go down to period 2. Now I can start adding kids to period 2. And then I'm done. Okay, so if you notice here I have some students in period 1, period 2. And so then when I go back to learning, and I'm going to go into social studies this time. Okay, if you want to do it by topics or grades here, you can. I think grades is much better for social studies, but if you want to look by topic, you can definitely do that as well. So then here, let's say purposes of government. I look at the overview again. I can go and scroll over these circles and click on them. And then if I want to assign, I just highlight the star. You don't want to click on it yet. But if I want it all students, or I can go in here and say, okay, I want Dumu or Demu, however you pronounce that, to do period 1, and I want to go into period 2, and I wanted to give it to Jeremiah and Noah. So then I've automatically right now only assigned it to those specific students. So that's how you would do that here. Or I can just click all students and then it assigns it to everyone. Andrea, anything to follow up on that?
I don't think so. I'm reading through some of the questions. Do we want to look at if there are any other questions about rosters or assigning? Do you guys want to ask those now? And then we can move on to look at some of those student reports.
Mm-hmm. So if I go back to roster.
Oh, there was one question I don't know the answer to, Nancy. Sorry. Walter Nordstrom asked, some of the lessons have a search shortcut. Do I need to pay attention to that? It looks like a 3-letter code. I don't know what that means.
A search shortcut.
Yeah.
I don't think so, Walter. I think you can ignore that part. I'm not sure what that is.
Now, all of the skills and standards are connected to Indiana standards.
Yes, so I can show that next. If you guys would mute real quick, I'll go over that. I just am getting some feedback. So if you go in, and not all of you are going to see all of this, you may only see what your subject is, but if you want to go to Indiana standards, okay, so once you click Indiana standards, here it says Indiana math, language arts, science, social studies, Spanish. So say I click on social studies, and now I can click on 6th grade. And now you will see here are the Indiana standards and what lessons they have determined fall in that standard. Now, be careful here, because sometimes what they think really goes with the standard may not fully go over that standard. So this is a good way to look at specific ones. If you're looking for that standard, just know that because they put it there, it doesn't mean that it's covering the whole standard. So for example, 6.1.3, they have the Byzantine Empire in here, and that may not cover all of that. So I just wanted to point that out. So again, if you click on Indiana standards, then you'll click on your subject. So if I go to science, and then I go to 7th grade underneath it, it will give me, now if you notice, like some of these 7th grade science standards do not have lessons that go with it. That's why it might be better if you go in by topic when you're searching for that. But here are some that go with 7.ps.1, and then you can go down and see the earth and space science ones that they get. So questions on that?
Yeah, I would just reiterate what Nancy said, like double checking what the lesson is. Some of them are loosely connected, I would say, to the standard, like knowing some of those science standards, it would be surprising to me that that is the lesson they would choose. There are some other ones that aren't quite at the 8th grade, like looking at 8th grade science, for instance. There are some that would line up better from 6th grade, but they don't list those when you look at that Indiana standards list. So just be cognizant of that. Nancy, just to reiterate, if they don't have their account yet, they are supposed to just email you, right?
Yes, just email me if you do not have an account. April, I can give you admin access, so that way you can go in and look at your building reports and everything. No problem. So again, so say I'm on this page and here's identify rocks and minerals. You can click on this. You can see the skill preview. It goes to the questions again. Now, this is what the kids see. Okay, and so here they would have to answer the questions, and it shows them questions answered and then how much time has elapsed. And so in science, I'm not sure that it gives them a SMART score. So just know I know in math and language arts and I think social studies and Spanish, it gives them a SMART score, which a SMART score is just sort of keeping track of how many they're getting correct. And you want them to get to an 80, which is proficient. It gives them a score as they're going along. Okay. And so if they are answering all of them correctly throughout the skill, it will keep going up. If they miss it, it will go down a little bit. So it really goes up and down with the students, and you want them to hit at least 80 because that is considered proficient on IXL. So I'm not sure that science does that though. So just know that as kids are going through these, you can see I'm just going to submit here. All right, it shows you here I got this one wrong and an explanation. So just know that it will go through a little bit of an explanation for science, but it does not give like a SMART score here. If I go into, for example, math, and I just want to show you what this SMART score looks like. I'm just going to start. Now you notice right here it says SMART score out of 100. And so as students are answering, now it won't go up unless I get it correct. So they will get a SMART score in math. I'm not sure about social studies. If I go in here, I know that science didn't really do that. So it looks like social studies doesn't either. So just a heads up as you're doing this. Now you notice some of these, they're not just answering like a multiple choice. They may have to do something like this. One thing that I want to make clear for everybody though, is that this should not be a lesson replacement. So this is from Rick Doss, and your principals know that this should not be the main lesson. Okay, so this isn't your primary tool of pushing out lessons. This is for practice. It's up to you. Rick said something about possibly using it for extra credit as well. This is great practice. It's great differentiation if you know your kids need that extra practice in certain skills. But please know that this is not to be your lesson. Like go on to IXL, I've assigned things and be done with it. So I just want to make that clear. Other things on here that I want to show you is this at-home learning hub. They just put this together through all of these. This is planned for at-home learning. They put all these resources together so you can see, or just to help guide you through this time using this with kids at home. So just know that these are here too. It takes you to a guide that you can go into and steps to successfully implement. Assign skills daily, get SMART scores. Again, be careful with science social studies. They don't have that. Let me go into, I want to see Spanish, and I want to show the Spanish teachers that are on as well. So if I go into Spanish, here it has it by units, and then here it has it by categories. So even by categories here, you could even look at vocabulary, grammar, listening, reading, and task-based. So if you're talking about common verbs, the AR or IR and ER, you could go in here. Again, this has like what grade level, I guess, would go with it, but just ignore that as, if these are specific skills that you're trying to teach or lessons, then you could use these to help you differentiate or help the students practice. But again, the same thing. If I just highlight my mouse over here, I can get a skill preview and I can click on these circles and it gives me the preview. And then if I just put my cursor over the star, I can assign it to all students, all of period one, or if I just want to give it to certain kids, now I can click on period one and just give it to certain students if I want to do that. So for Spanish, it may say at the top here, like you have 26 days remaining of unlimited access to Spanish. Please know that I've reached out to them and they said we have this, I think, until June 30th, but we do have it till the end of the school year this year to help you. So again, with Spanish, you have all of these categories, or you can go by units and the same thing. Any questions on that before we go into reports? Or Andrea or Anastasia, if you want to jump in, any of the coaches?
There was a question from Grant concerning what are current district expectations of math and L&L teachers' IXL usage. Like, do the students have a certain amount that they're supposed to accomplish, or like they're supposed to do per day, per week? Is there an allotment that must be met? He just wanted background on that. Anastasia felt like it was different per building, so I don't know what your...
So I'm going to defer that to principals.
Okay.
Their building administration, they can go to those building admin and they will let them know about that. I just know at a district level, Rick has said that this is not to be used as the primary tool of giving lessons online. We don't want to just set it up and say, go online every day. Also, everyone needs to be cognizant that math and language arts has been using this all year. So just know that we don't want to give so much IXL because we could literally have every single teacher say, oh, just jump on IXL. So be careful of that as you are doing this. Please be intentional about your IXL use. This is a great resource to differentiate. Spanish, it's great if it has that listening tool and everything on here, but just be careful when you're assigning IXL as practice that you are just being purposeful with it. Tutton and Karan, I can set you up with admin access. If you would just email me and remind me, I will do that as emails are flowing through.
Nancy, we had one question at the bottom, and Nicole Carney asked, how do you unassign a task? And can you set due dates for tasks?
Okay, so if I go in here greeting people and saying goodbye, that's a good question. So here, if I click on it again, if I highlight it, I think all you have to do is just unclick and then it will take off. So say you assigned it to everybody. Again, if you just click on these stars, it's automatically going to assign to all of your students. But if you just put your cursor there and you want it to certain students, you can, and then you would just need to unclick it for them. So say I give it to Amelia Smith. Okay, I've assigned it to her. And if you notice, it's not completely filled in. The star is striped. Stripes mean that you have assigned it to only specific people or only specific classes. It didn't go to everybody. So if I just highlight this again, and then I go in here, I can just click on that and it will unassign. Andrea, I'm not sure if you can give due dates. Do you know
So
that?
I don't think so. I think you can do it if we were a district that utilized Google Classroom. Maybe Anastasia knows more because they use it quite often at Wesleyan. But from my understanding, the teacher like just gives the due date on Canvas, right? Like Sully said, like they just link it and they have a due date, because a lot of classrooms that I'm in will list on their board like, this is the IXL, this is the due date. So it's not, I don't know that it's embedded into IXL without using Google Classroom.
I've never seen due dates within IXL. I've seen exactly how Andrea is saying, where students will either have a IXL folder to work on certain skills, or they all have to complete certain tasks for practice, but I've never seen due dates on IXL itself.